Welcome to my last Pinkcast for Chapter 6. Finally, huh? My goal with this chapter's Pinkcast is to discuss with you how you use inventory to evaluate a company. We're going to look at two ratios as they relate to inventory. We're going to look at inventory turnover as a ratio to evaluate how efficiently a company is managing their inventory, and then days sales in inventory. So our goal will be to look at two ratios that help us understand and evaluate inventory. The inventory turnover ratio we'll look at first. Guess we should write inventory there. Our inventory turnover ratio says let's take a number off the income statement, our cost of goods sold, and divide it by our average inventory. This is where students sometimes get into trouble. What is average inventory and why are we averaging it? Well, remember, cost of goods sold is for a period of time, and an inventory account comes from the balance sheet, and that's a point in time. By taking beginning inventory and adding it to the ending inventory, and then dividing that number by 2, you make it more of an average for that period of time. Let's try some numbers in our inventory turnover ratio. Let me give you some. Let's say your cost of goods sold is $484,000 for a business, and that their beginning inventory from the beginning of the year was $88,800, and their ending inventory from the last of the year was $111,200. Let's use those numbers to calculate our inventory turnover. Cost of goods sold is $484,000. What is our average inventory? $88,800 plus $111,200 added together and then divided by 2 will give us our denominator. What does that work out to be? If you work through the math in the denominator, you'll find that 88,800 plus 111,200 divided by 2 is 100,000. So you can now take 484,000 and divide that by 100,000, and that tells you your inventory turnover is 4.84, which means you turn your inventory over 4.84 times a year. Is that good or bad? That depends on the business you're in. Car dealership, that'd probably be all right. You're turning your inventory over more than every 3 months, probably pretty accurate. That's produce company. Ew. So, turnover varies by industry. Let's take that now and use that to calculate days sales in inventory. This is a simple calculation. We say 365 divided by inventory turnover. In our case, inventory turnover was 4.84. So if you take 365 and divide that by 4.84, you'll find that your average day sales in inventory is 75.4. So on average, you keep your inventory 75 days. Or you have 75 days worth of inventory on hand at any given time. Is this enough? Is this not enough? How do you evaluate these two? Well, remember, with all ratios, we can look at them over time. If your inventory turnover, say, is 4.0 in 2009, and in 2010 it's 4.2, and in 2011 it's 4.3, in 2012 it's 4.4, and 2013 it's 4.84. You would say that's a good sign. We're turning our inventory over more and more frequently. How about days in inventory? You can look at it over time as well. You can also look at these ratios by comparing them to your competitors. Easy enough to find information on your competitors. If your competitors look like they're turning their inventory over on a regular basis of 3 times a year, and you could say you're regularly doing better than your competitors and you seem to be improving as well. Now how about the inventory on hand? The 75.4. The only way that you could really analyze, here we looked at inventory turnover, the only way you could really analyze days in inventory is to look at your inventory over a period of time and see if you tend to be having more on hand and less, and then compare that to your competitors and then make a judgment. Holding inventory is expensive, so you want to have enough on hand so that you always meet your sales needs, but it's expensive, so you don't want to tie up more money in inventory than you need to. That'd be an easy way to go broke, wouldn't it? Especially if you're comparing or you're carrying accounts receivable. That's it. That finishes up my Pincast for Chapter 6. Thank you so much for joining me.